You're listening to Just a Dude podcast with your host, Nathan. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's roll. Hey dudes and dudettes, it's your host Nathan, back with another chill combo. Today we're diving into something we all deal with, work. But not the soul-crushing kind, how to make it better. I've got Alyssa Zylbershlag from WorkWise Labs here to talk about simplifying work life, building a vibe at the office, and why leadership doesn't have to suck. Alyssa, welcome to the show. So you're with WorkWise Labs. Give us the elevator pitch. What's the deal with you guys over there? And give us a little bit of information about yourself as well.
Sure. Well, my name is Alyssa Zylbershlag. As you know, that can be a hard name to pronounce. So I like to say it nice and clearly up front. And I am the owner and founder of WorkWise Labs. We help managers feel more confident in the workplace. That's my elevator pitch. So what does that mean? Is I think what a lot of people want to know. It can look like a lot of things. So it can look like one-on-one professional coaching. It can be team building workshops at a retreat or a professional development day. It can be confidence building programs to fight imposter syndrome for new or new-ish leaders. It could be about consulting with leaders higher up in organizations to streamline and organize their operations. It's just a whole bunch of things.
Excellent. I mean, so it basically sounds, Alyssa, like you're basically the work-life whisperer, right? And I definitely need that in my life. But, you're helping management become better at what they do, right? And empowering them to be the best that they really can be. Would that be it in a nutshell?
That's it in a nutshell. I mean, here we have lots of tongue twisters going on. But, what happens so typically is somebody's really good at their job. So they get promoted and then they're no longer doing that job because now they're managing and nobody tells them how to manage. So my real goal with all of it is to help people. I was always the office in every job that I've had where people would come in, shut the door and say, "Hey, Alyssa, I need to talk to you. I got a problem. Help me." Or listen to me, or brainstorm with me, or, ask me questions, help me figure this out. So
you've always had kind of like that open door policy, which has kind of led to this, to collaborate with individuals and people that you work with. And you've taken that to the next step by expanding it to not just the company that you work for, but any individual or company out there. Is that correct?
yeah, that's right. And this business happened very organically. I wasn't really looking for it. I've been an anti-bias educator for over 20 years with different organizations, nonprofits, government organizations, and people have always sought me out, which is nice, right? That makes
absolutely.
Makes you kind of feel good. I've always been a relationship builder. It's my personality. It's who I am. And so people have always sought me out and asked me to do things on the side. And in August of 23, I was being asked to do things. And my dad said to me, "Alyssa," he's an attorney, "you better make an LLC." And I was like, oh, I wasn't even really thinking about it. I was just like, sure, I could do this. Sure, I could do that. As a side gig. And that's
and it turned into it. So are you doing this? Is this full time for you now, Alyssa?
Yeah. So it's full time now. As with many people, I think what happened was, well, I shouldn't say as with many people because
sure.
I think
I know where you're going, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel lucky, right? Like people wanted me, and I ended up getting a contract with a local university, and it was pretty big, and I was excited, an 8-month contract. And I was doing that while I was still full-time at my job. And I was like coming home from work and working, and then working on the weekends. And I have 2 children and a husband and a dog, but my kids are 18 and 16 now. And they were like, "We never see you." And
right.
And I'm like, well, I never see you either. And so I had to make a decision.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you could make a decision that could help your family life as well, because I think so many folks today, and I know that this was traditionally more of a, I guess you could say, a gender role for a man type topic, but I want to say women and men nowadays put a lot into their work and sometimes can neglect the family a little bit. And I'm not saying that's what you did, but I know from, some of my experience. So in my past, I was a police officer. I was always working. I felt like I was always working anyway. I feel like I go in for an 8-hour shift and always came home 16 hours later. But
Yeah.
it was the same thing. I totally understand. We get involved in our work and we want to do the best that we can. It becomes part of our identity sometimes, and we neglect the things that are really important. And I'm glad to hear that you said, you were given an opportunity, and you said you didn't get to see your kids all the time, but you seized on that opportunity because now, it gave you, here's an opportunity for you to not only financially meet your goals, but to also stay with your family. And I love that, because I think there's not enough people out there that spend enough time with their family nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, that's work-life balance, right? And I gosh, I would say more than half, maybe even three-quarters of clients that I have, we end up having conversations about work-life balance. And I actually had a client just earlier I was coaching. She's became a manager about 3.5 years ago. I'm just looking back in my notes because she gave me a great quote that she was saying. We ended up talking about work-life balance. And she said that she was scrolling through socials and she saw this image, and it was like the calendar week, right? Like when you look at the
Hmm.
calendar, it's like Monday, Tuesday, and it had like how much you spend at home or like personal life versus work life. And every day it was totally different. And it said, your best self looks different every day. And so I think a lot of people think like, I need to spend time either with my work or with my life. And it's just not like that.
No.
That's not how it works. Sometimes your work is going to be 80% of your day and your home life's going to be 20. And other days it'll be opposite. It's just unrealistic to think that life will be split 50.
Yeah, it's unrealistic to go into it and say, okay, here's my day. I'm going to do 12 hours at work or at my work life and 12 hours at home. It doesn't work that way. But and that's a great way, I think, that you put it. And I wanted to go into this next because, I wanted to see how you tackle burnout and chaos, with practical solutions. And that right there is a practical one, to realize that it's not going to be a cut and dry 12 hours, 12 hours. Yeah, you might have 16 hours of work today, but then you might have 16 hours of family tomorrow. And that's a good way to look at it, is to not try to plan out everything, but take it as it comes almost. Have some agility, right?
Yeah, have agility, but I think there's actually something that's underlying everything. When you talk about practical solutions about managing work life or managing your work, what I call the keystone to everything is self-awareness. And when you think about what a keystone is, I don't know, did you ever read that book by Ken Follett, Pillars of the Earth?
No, I have not.
Okay. It's this like epic novel about, and it sounds so boring, but it's about the building of a cathedral in the 12th century. I mean, I guess that sounds boring to me. Not my cup of tea. But somebody said, you have to read this. You have to read. I mean, I read it like 25 years ago and I still think about it because they talk about building this cathedral over hundreds of years. And, they didn't have the tools that we have now. So they had to build these stone walls, right? Up, and they had to lean them against each other. And they put a stone right at the top, the keystone that holds the walls up. And that's why you have these cathedrals that are so old. You go to Europe and you go around the world. There are these cathedrals that are just majestic and amazing. They're actually feats of architecture, right? They're amazing structures, and they last through fires. They last through everything because they have that keystone, and they don't have the same building. They didn't have the building materials we have now.
Right. Yeah, everything was different.
Everything was different, but that keystone, that is the secret to life. If I should be so bold to say that I know the secret to life. The secret, that keystone, is self-awareness. And when you know and truly understand self-awareness, you can have a better life. I mean, there's research out there about it. People who know themselves are just happier people. They make smarter decisions. They do better at work. They're more creative. They choose better careers. They're better parents. They get more promotions. They raise more mature children. I mean, there's just like 100 things that the research says that life is better and you are happier when you are self-aware.
So how would, for our guests that are listening, or for our folks that are listening, how would you be, do you have any tips on how you would become more self-aware, throughout your life? And I guess it's going to be different per individual, right? But maybe some things that could help everyone, brought more.
Do I have tips? Of course I have tips. So before I even get to that, what I'd like to do is define self-awareness, because I think people think they know what being self-aware is, but really they don't. In fact, I have a workshop on self-awareness, and I ask at the beginning, how self-aware do you think you are? And I would say about 90% say that they're either very self-aware or somewhat self-aware. And there was research done by a woman named Tasha Eurich. She's one of the lead researchers on self-awareness. And she said that through her research, what she found is that 87% of people think they're self-aware, but only 13% actually are.
And that doesn't surprise me, because I think a lot of us, do think of self-aware, but I think, like you going into this definition is going to help people understand what self-awareness really is. Because I agree with you. I think, I sit here to say I'm self-aware, but probably just a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, me too. I think it's like kind of a universal struggle. So the definition of self-awareness that comes from Tasha Eurich is the ability to see ourselves clearly, to understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. So let me break that down for you with a metaphor that I've developed, that I've come up with. So I call self-awareness, true self-awareness, the mirror and the portrait. So the mirror is the idea of self-awareness that most people think, like, I look in the mirror and I know who I am. I see myself, and that represents that private self-awareness, the thoughts you have in your own head about self-awareness. What are your values? What are your passions in life? What are your aspirations? When they say fit, what they mean is like, where do you fit best? Like, are you the type of person who would rather go to a huge party, or are you one-on-one, or do you people just exhaust you, right? Like, where do you fit best? Where do you fit best in the world? And, that idea of looking in the mirror and knowing these things about yourself, sometimes the mirror can be distorted, and it can be a funhouse mirror that you're looking in.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. And that's where that self-awareness gap, that 87% think they're self-aware, but only 13% actually are. Like, that's that gap, right? You look in the mirror, you think you know who you are, but then we get to the portrait. And the portrait represents public self-awareness. This is about seeing how other people see us. When I met you, Nathan, you painted a portrait in your mind of who I was. And I have no idea. I have not seen that portrait. How do I get access to that portrait? And the portrait is about our impact on the world. We move through the world and we leave ripples behind us, like a boat going through the ocean, or maybe a boat going through a lake, because the ocean has waves. Oh, well, maybe it's an ocean. Whatever the body of water you want it to be. And it's about our impact. How our actions, our beliefs, our values, how are they affecting other people? And so that's sort of how I think about self-awareness and how I present it to my clients.
So almost like an internal/external self-awareness, like how I see myself, how others see me, or what my impact is on others.
It's not almost. It's exactly.
That's it.
It's internal self-awareness versus external self-awareness, or
I love that.
private
And
and public.
yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I was thinking when you said, the thoughts that are in your mind, what your ambitions are. Yeah, those are not things that we generally share with the general public. Maybe a spouse or, a child or something like that. Maybe that's more intimate. But generally, the people we interact with every day, other than those folks, yeah, we're not sitting there saying, hey, I want to have a podcast and I want it to be, famous. Or, in your case, hey, I want to be able to go out and help managers become the best that they can and become self-aware so that they can help, build these companies. It's, you know, outwardly now I know that's what you want to do, Alyssa, because obviously you've told me and you build a business off of it. And that that's what I want to do because you can see here we are talking. But yeah, it's great to know that because you're right. There are two different perspectives of self-awareness. And I guess the easier part would be maybe not easy because, we sometimes are our own worst enemies, but looking at ourselves versus how do other people look at us? I think that could be a tricky situation because some of us, like you said, with imposter syndrome and other things, we may not see ourselves accurately. And then, so do we depend more on the introspective or the extrospective for, that self-awareness? What would your thoughts be on that?
I mean, I think it's all of
All of
C,
it together. I
all of
mean,
the
obviously
above.
all together.
Yeah. I mean, so when we think about, I think when we look in the mirror and we see ourselves, we can see ourselves clearer when we have that external data, so to speak, right? So there's two ways in particular that I can talk about because I think it's much harder to see the portrait that other people paint of us. So many of us, you get a glimpse and you shut down or you don't want to see it or you deny it or there's so many mechanisms as humans that we use to protect ourselves, right? From
Yes.
hearing something that maybe we don't know or we don't think. And so two ways that we can see the portrait in practical life are through social cues and through feedback. So then the question becomes,
Yeah.
how do you,
Exactly. What are the social cues that I should look for? Or, how do I ask someone for feedback? Or I'm sure some people will volunteer it. But
but
yeah.
I mean, let me ask you, Nathan, you've had jobs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've had performance reviews.
I have. Yeah.
Okay. Have
Yep.
you ever had to give a performance review?
I have had to give a performance review. Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me
So
about
I've given plenty of performance reviews where we look at, specific things that are generated generally by the company that they want you to, gauge people on. And what I always told people that I worked with where I had to give a performance review is you are going to know what your performance review is going to be based on your actions prior to it. Right. So I say, if you're going to get, written up or get a bad performance review, it should not be a surprise. Right. Because my job as a manager, or I used to I like to think of as a leader or a servant leader. That's the type of the role that I have now, is to serve you. And I can't do that if I just let you make mistakes without trying to help you correct it. Right. To find the way that works for you. So it was, when I had those bad reviews, they knew it beforehand because I was working with them and, trying to tell them, hey, this is, these are the things that we need to do. Here's where we need to improve. Here's some suggestions on how to improve it. Here's where we can go for the next steps and work through that. But when it come down to the review, that was generally all those things have been done. So they would see that reflected in their review. But we would always go forward with next review. I want to see at least, a point higher. And this is how we're going to do it, right? We come up with a plan together to help them improve their performance.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a couple things that are really important, right? Number one, and this is something that new managers don't always know, is that number one, nobody should be walking into a performance review without and hearing things for the first time.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. So that's like number one. And number two, you mentioned what are actionable next steps that are practical
Yes.
and clear. I worked with a manager recently who was like, I want them to be better at this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Yeah, but
What
how?
exactly do you want
Yes.
them to be better at? How do you want them to do it? They can do it. They have to just tell me by this date that. And so
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's confusing for
It
people.
is, yeah. Just better at what? Like better at, depending on what it is, at communicating with you. Is it better at documenting? Is it better at, what does better mean, right?
What does better mean? And, I think a lot of people miss that boat in new management. Like I said, you get put into a role and my last job was at the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights. And I worked with a lot of investigators, right?
Hmm.
And they would investigate, and then someone would be like a really great investigator and be promoted to manager, and now they're not investigating anymore. And so it's like, and they didn't realize there shouldn't be surprises. It's like obvious when you're told it, but it's not always obvious off the bat for everyone.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because I've worked with new managers. I've been a new manager myself. And a lot of times, no matter how good your training programs are or your management, leadership development programs and things like that, something always seems to be missed. There's always one point of that aspect too, especially for new managers. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of companies make is like you said, they get someone like I work with engineers or, software developers, and they're great software developers, and they say, hey, you know what? We want to stick this guy around. He's got great knowledge. We want to do this. We're going to make him a manager. But then they never teach him how to be a manager, and how to properly manage or work with people. And I've seen that quite often, time and time again, where I go, and it's not until months or sometimes years later that people actually get into a leadership course or, a course like yours that shows people how to be good managers. And yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's a difference also between like your Fortune 500 or your corporate
Hmm.
America, which they have leadership development programs in their companies and leadership programs for aspiring leaders and new leaders and onboarding for that. But there's a lot of companies that are small. There's nonprofits, there's foundations, government work, although government's its own separate thing that I could
It
probably,
is. Yeah.
I have a whole podcast just
We'd
on
have a
how
whole
I
nother
feel
episode on
about
the government, right,
how
Alyssa?
I feel about working for the government, but I don't work for them anymore. That's enough said. But there's all of these companies, they might have an HR, but those HRs manage benefits and, things like that. They're
Yes.
not
Yep.
doing the leadership developments. That's where WorkWise Labs comes in. I have a program in particular called Next Level Leadership for new or new-ish managers. And it's 6 months. And each month is a virtual live training on a different topic like leadership confidence or giving and receiving feedback or managing low and high performers. And there's 6 topics. And then they also get 2 one-on-one coaching sessions. I have a group of
Nice.
I have a group of coaches that they can choose from. Each participant can choose from because we know, right? There are good leaders and there are great leaders, and every great leader has a professional coach.
Yeah,
Truth.
you're right. Or at least a mentor within the space, right? To help them. And you're absolutely right. And I love that, because I have worked with some very, very good leaders, and they've all had at least a mentor, if not a coach, someone that they could rely on, myself included. And then I've worked with some folks that just think that they're, the manager or in a position, and that's it. They're, the end of the line. It ends with them. Everything they say comes out of their mouth is gold, but we all know that's not true.
Right. Right. There's a little lack of self-awareness there.
Yes, for sure.
And then the Next Level Leadership Program also has leadership roundtables where once a month they get together and talk about the wins of the topic that month. What went well? What do they need help with? And there's also conversation on other like smaller topics that can be connected to that month's main topic.
Yeah, that's and with these courses that you have, do you teach things like I think you mentioned team building and or something like to that nature, where building up teams and helping them be a better team leader? Are those some of the things that you work on as well?
Well, I mean, people can use these topics to create better teams and stronger teams and more, have a more positive workplace and have their teams thrive. When I say team building, I provide team building workshops. WorkWise
Gotcha.
Labs
Yep.
goes to your place of
That's
business.
awesome.
And
So
we
you
have,
can actually work with the individual teams within a
yes,
corporation or an LLC. I don't want to say a corporation, right? You will not if a company wants to hire you that has 50,000 employees or one that has 50, you'll be willing to help any of them, right?
any of them. Yeah. And so we started talking about, kind of going to bring us back to the portrait and talking
Yeah.
about social cues and feedback, because I think that this idea of feedback, and we were talking about performance reviews, and I asked you, have you done them? And you explained how you do them. So I just kind of want to come back to that and ask you a follow-up question. I will be interviewing you now, Nathan, and ask you a follow-up question. Have you ever had a hard time figuring out how to give that feedback?
I have. I've had some situations, and more, and maybe not the feedback at the review stage, but maybe prior to that, because
Mhm.
of working with individuals. But I've found some tough ways where you tell someone or teach someone how to do something, and they just don't get it. And a lot of times, in those situations, I would find that's where I would struggle. So what I would do is bring someone else in and say, this is how I'm explaining it. Is there a different way that maybe I could explain this that would help, someone else? Or, is there a way that you can explain it that's different than I did that might help them? So I will bring in outside help, even if it's other employees, or because I realize everybody has a different learning style and everybody has a different way of retaining knowledge. Some people need to watch it while hearing it. Some people need to just read it. Some people need to read it and hear it, so you have to realize there's those different learning methods. And that was always a hard part for me, because you fall back to what you know. Right. And how you learn, but you have to realize that no, other people learn differently. And if we can find a way that clicks with that person, that's always the hardest part for me, is to find a way that clicks. And sometimes people just don't care too, which is unfortunate.
I mean, there's lots of different responses and different types
There
of
is.
people that, when you're giving feedback, that they're not receiving it. And there's
Yeah.
lots of different reasons. And, in my giving and receiving feedback training, we talk about that. What do you do with the resistors, right? The people who are resisting, and some people are resisting willingly,
Yeah.
fighting
They're,
the power,
yep.
and other people are resisting because, and don't, and unwillingly, like they don't even realize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I've even seen things too where people are like, "Well, I think this is stupid. I don't understand why we need to do this." And that's I always look at that as an opportunity to say, "Oh, you know what? I didn't do a good job of explaining this." Right? So I like to tell people the why. This is why we're doing it. This is how it helps us. This is what we're going to use it for. This is how it's going to benefit our customers, X, Y, Z, whatever of that I could give. And that's probably one of my biggest downfalls, is people say I try to explain too much. But I've always been, I'm a why person, and I like to know the why, just because I'm fascinated. It's not going to change whether I do it or not, but I'm always fascinated to find out why we do things, to see where they go.
Yeah. And so the why is really important. People need context. They need to understand why. And I would add, I call it the we FM, the what's in it for me.
Yeah,
So they need to know the we FM. They need to know, like, the why contextually, and then they need to know the WFM personally. And sometimes it's like, what's in it for you is you're not going to get written up. you know
exactly. I mean, it can be as easy as that, right? Sometimes the boss says, I want you to do this. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you have to do it.
you
So
have to do it.
just part of life.
And I think people who are, when you're not in leadership, you don't understand that even the leaders have to do things they don't want to do. And they have to turn a situation or something that they don't like, and turn it on, like reframe it in their minds to sell it to their teams. Because even if they know it's not a great idea, if they didn't have the opportunity to change minds, then they still have to do it. I had this boss once. They said to me, there was a university where I was, and there was a bias incident at the university. And my boss called me. I was the head of the education and training. And my boss called me. Alyssa, she said, I need you to train all the students at the university. Okay. I was like, how many? Quick Google, how many students?
Right.
20,000 students. I'm like, this is a Band-Aid. Like 20,000 students. And she's like, I said, that's just like not even possible. And she said, I had like a staff of 7 or something like that. I was like,
Exactly.
that's like literally not even possible. I don't have enough staff. I don't have enough time. Like I still have my whole other job. That's like a full-time job just to
Yeah.
train
I mean,
20,000 people.
how long would that would take years
Years,
probably.
years, years. And so she's like, I don't care, Alyssa. You have to get it done. And I said, okay, well then I guess I'll have to rent out MetLife Stadium.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And she was like, I said, yeah, that's like you're asking me to do something that's like, I would like pyrotechnics. I would like a
Exactly.
band. I would,
Yep.
like, what
We're
do you
gonna need a
mean?
band to come in. We're gonna have to feed them. Let's do this,
I would like Taylor Swift to come, please.
Right.
She's the master of anyway. So, and I had to quickly sell why that wouldn't work. And that's part of management too, right? It's negotiation and persuasion.
Yeah. And, in management, a lot of people think it's, tell people what to do, but it's really a two-way street, and two-way meaning between, well, three-way, because you have the people you report to, and then you have the people that report to you. So there's, two different directions that are coming at you. And, I'm a firm believer and what I do, Alyssa, in my real job is I'm a scrum master, which is essentially a project manager for IT teams. And so servant leadership is the biggest thing for me. Remove blockers, get you the tools you need when you need them, make sure that you have everything you need to do successfully. And I think a lot of people often forget when they get in that management position that what it was like to be Joe Worker, and to take those ideas from the people that are actually doing the work. And I think we miss that a lot, that we always think once we get into a position of, management or quote unquote power, right? We sometimes forget that. So is that something that you instill to management as well, to make sure that they listen to those folks that not only are above them, but below them as well?
Yeah. So I have a decision-making model that I use that I find to be really, really helpful and that I teach to my clients. It's super simple. When you have to make a decision, there's 4 ways you can make it. It can be a you decision. So me,
Hmm.
mine with input, ours or yours. So when you're making decisions, there are times where it is a mine.
Yeah, sure.
Like, boom, I knew we are not training 20,000 students this
Right.
year, right? Mine decision. I did not have to talk to anybody else about that. There are other times where it's still a mine, but I'm not 100% and I'd like some input. Then it's really great when it's like not a high stakes decision and everyone's going to be involved in it. Let's make it an hours. We all we all have equal weight in this decision. And I'll tell you something. For example, an example of that kind of decision was we had a training and I had like the cutest title. I loved the title of this training. It was such a good one. And everyone on my team, well, other people liked it. A couple people didn't like it. Whatever. There was like this whole vote and I got outvoted and we changed it to the most boring title ever. And I was like, and I was the one selling it. So I'd be like, the real title is,
Yeah, you would. This should have been a me decision.
yeah. I was like, man, what did I do? But I said, this is an hours, equal weight. We voted and I lost.
Yep. And sometimes we lose. And you know what? Showing that we can lose, especially in a management position, is an extremely powerful thing if you think about it, because it truly shows your teammates that it is a team process.
Yeah.
That the team does have a say, and it's not just a one person show.
That nice catch there. And
Yes.
yeah, and then there's the yours. And that's like, listen, this needs to be done. However you want to do it, I'm happy with it, and just get done.
Yeah, and I found myself doing that a lot, especially when I worked like in a call center environment. What I'd like to do a lot to get to really empower people was say, "Hey, this is the outcome that we need. I want to empower you to determine how we get to that outcome." Right? What does it work for you? So person A, you like to do it this way, but person B likes to do it this way. As long as that outcome is the same, that's fine with me. Right? As long as we're getting the job done that we need to do, feel free to do it yourself. I feel that gives, our workers and those of us that, and even looking back to myself, it empowers me as a worker to say, hey, I've got some stock in what I do.
Yeah. 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 And so, that decision-making model can be really helpful for new leaders. I mean, for old leaders.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, there's some old leaders out there that probably need to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, it's a help. And I don't want to say old because I'm in
No.
that category now.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting there too.
Man, I just turned 50
But yes,
this year.
We're talking about leaders that have been doing it for a while.
Seasoned.
Yes.
Well seasoned.
Experienced, maybe.
Experienced, yes. Yes, experienced. So, yeah. So, we're talking about a lot of things. And one thing that I had written down that I really wanted to share with you and with your listeners is this great quote, because I think people have a hard time with feedback and with going back, getting us back into the self-awareness and thinking about feedback. It's also from Tasha Eurich. And what she says is feedback from one person is a perspective. Feedback from two people is a pattern, but feedback from three or more people is likely to be as close to a fact as you're going to get.
Oh, I love that. That's a great quote. That really is. I mean, I can't say anything more about it because it's laid out right there perfectly.
Yeah. And people are going to tell you, and I want to highlight this because just because somebody tells you something and that's the portrait that they've painted of you, doesn't mean that it's an accurate portrait.
Right. That's their portrait.
Their portrait of you. And there's information in that. There's data in that. So, you can know who the person is. And, I'll share a little something personal. There was a point in my career where I was accused of something pretty awful. And it was not comfortable for me. And I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of thinking about it. And I had a coach. I even went to therapy about it because it was really upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like someone really, really accused me of something that was like my integrity, like who I am as a human. And at the end of the day, I walked away with that thinking of this quote. I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of thinking, and I'm still processing and still thinking about it. It comes up all the time for me, and it was a long time ago. But this feedback from one person is a perspective. Feedback from two people is a pattern. Feedback from three or more is likely to be as close to a fact as you're going to get. How many people had I heard that from? One. And that was her perspective. And you know what? While I disagreed with her perspective, it was also my responsibility to see the portrait that she had painted of me and why she painted that portrait of me. And what do I need to do that I never really thought of before because nobody had ever even said anything close like that about me. So I never had to think about it before. It actually opened up a whole new way for me to manage people. And I became a better manager because of it and a better leader because of it. And so even if the portrait isn't accurate, there's still something you can take from it.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. There's at least something there that you can at least see how others are seeing you or get an idea, especially with one, right? I mean, you don't want to discredit one piece of feedback, but also you don't want to take it as the truth for everyone either.
Right. It is not the be all end all, but I'll tell you, when I heard it, rocked my world. Took me probably a year to get out of that headspace and that rumination. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my God.
Yeah, especially when we take things as perceived negatively, right? Which could be, perceived as a negative from our part where it's really meant, to help us improve. I think that's probably the toughest part. If somebody comes and tells you, Alyssa, you do great on this, this, and this. Okay, yeah, I'll take that feedback. Absolutely, right? That's going to be easy. But if someone, comes to you and says, or like to me, and says, Nate, well, you know what, these things, you do this, and it's really not the this or that or whatever, or we see you as being this. Yeah, you should take that information. But no, I agree. I love the aspect of looking at yourself, and you got to try to stay objective as much as you can, but it's still you. And I think that's one of the questions I wanted to come to next, Alyssa, is, what do we do with that feedback once we get it? Because obviously not all feedback is going to be, gold, right?
Right. I think probably the most helpful thing I can say is don't respond immediately. You are allowed to pause to say, thank you for the feedback. I want to think about it and go back to the person at a later date. Collect your thoughts, reflect, ask yourself questions. Now, one of the most damaging things that you can do is ask yourself why questions.
Mm.
So when you say, why me? Why did they say that about me? Why? Those are questions that you're never going to get answers to. So what I always tell clients to do is to ask how or what questions. So let's say your boss comes to you and they say, Nate, I don't like how you are scrumming. I don't even know what scrumming
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody does. But say, we
Scrum is.
we missed a couple of milestones on this project, right?
Yeah. So Nate, we've missed a couple of milestones on this project and I don't like the direction that it's going in and it needs to be totally undone and I am not happy with it. Now you could say things like, why are they only telling me now? Why,
Mm-hmm.
why didn't they say things early? Why, or you go into the why. Why are they always so mean to me? Why do they always say it to me? Why aren't they saying it to the other project
Right.
managers? Why, like you can do that and it's fruitless. Or you can ask questions like, what can I do to avoid this in the future? How am I going to fix this? What are my steps? Right. So it's future focused instead of
Yeah.
the past.
Would it be fair in that situation, for them to say, hey, I'm not happy with this, to ask a question like, well, how do you envision this going forward?
Of course. Of course. If you're in the mindset, right? If you're in a defensive mindset,
Which usually
tone,
we always are, right? When
right?
it first comes up.
So tone could play a role in that, right? Well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
No.
That's
Right.
not a good way to, especially if it's your boss, right?
Right. So it is always helpful I shouldn't say always. I try not to say always and never. It is usually helpful to say, thank you for telling me. I would like to think about it and collect your thoughts. You have to process, like process it, think about it. Do all the whys by yourself. Do all the defensiveness by yourself. Come back the next day and have a list of questions. Be thoughtful about it. Be forward thinking about it. Your boss will appreciate you.
And it's funny that you say that because I wish that's something I would have learned much earlier in my career, is that you didn't have to give a response right now, because there's some situations where, like you said, you take it as a personal attack, and maybe you don't handle things as well as you probably should have or would have handled it had you taken that time, to think. And that is a big thing. I think that if you have the time, take it. Right. I'm going to be with you 100% on that, Alyssa, because that has saved my rear end more than it hasn't, to just sit there and say, when they start telling you these things, you start getting defensive and you start saying, well, if you would have done this or if you would have done that, I would have been able to do this and this. And it's like, wait, that's not the conversation that's going to get us anywhere. So it is good to just say, you know what? Thank you for that feedback. I want to think about it a little bit. And, if we could, let's get together a little bit later and let's talk about this to see what's the best path for us going forward.
Yeah. And from the flip side, from the manager or the supervisor's perspective, when you're giving that feedback, I have a very specific 5-step method on how, like, it's basically a script about how to give feedback in a way that it will be received. But when you're giving that feedback, it's also very important to remember as the manager, they've never heard this before. They don't know. Be kind. Be thoughtful about it. Give them space to think about it. Let them process it. Don't put pressure I want an answer right now. Why? Like it, when you give feedback to somebody that's hard to give, it's hard to receive. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what you're going to say, they're going to have a hard time taking it in.
Yep.
And
No,
that's
you're
normal.
absolutely right. And that's, it's great that you say that, you should be, if it's hard for you, it's going to be hard for them. So give them time and even build it in, right? Like you said, if you know it's going to be hard, and especially if you know someone like, hey, if you know Nate, right? Oh, Nate can be real gut check. When you tell him something, he'll come right back at you. So maybe instead of even letting him get to that point, say, hey, Nathan, I want to give you some feedback, blah, blah, blah. I want you to take some time to talk about it. We don't need to, discuss this any further today, right now, but let's, you take it back, think about it, and then we'll come back together and see what's the best way for us to move on from this, you know?
I mean, sometimes that's the best way. And your people,
Like you do. You should.
I worked with a guy who I was the director and he was my deputy director. We worked really, really closely. Our styles were so different. And in the beginning, when we started working together, I would be like, I'm like, this is my brain, right? I am like, go, 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 go. I'm ready to think on the fly. I want to talk about it. Oh, here's an idea. Let's talk. And he needs to internally process. I need to externally process. I have to talk things through. He needs to sit with it and think about it. And in the beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, did I make a mistake? What did I do?
Right.
Oh my gosh. And then once we had the conversation about how we process information, and I was like, oh, you need time. Understood. And then forevermore, we worked together for years and years and years. Great partnership. I would say, here's what I'm thinking. Let's talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then
I love that. Yeah.
And then we were able to talk about it tomorrow. I was able to do the external processing. He had already thought about it, and we were at the same place. And that was, knowing your people and knowing your colleagues. And it takes a little while,
Yeah. And I love that, it's funny. I love that. I have discussions with my current boss now all the time, and, he'll do that. He's like, hey, I'm just going to prime the engine. Right. He's like, I'm going to prime the engine, but we're not going to talk about it. I just want you to think about it, and then we'll come back in a couple of days, and I love that because it does give me, I'm ready to throw him answers right now, but I throw better answers when I have time to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very, very true. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, this is all great, Alyssa. I love it. I do want to change gears a little bit. It's time for our rapid fire dude Q&A, and it's not rapid and there's no fire.
And
so
dudette.
no overthinking. Yeah, dudette. Well, dude, because I'm the dude, but you're the dudette. Makes sense?
Dudette. Yeah.
You're the dudette.
Okay. We're just a couple of dudes.
Yeah, just a couple of dudes and dudettes, right?
Yeah.
That hang out. But anyway, super easy, just to let the audience get to know a little bit about you, have some fun. But worst job you ever had?
Telemarketer.
That is I've done that, Alyssa, and I can tell you, yes, it is terrible, especially if you're cold calling, right?
Yes.
I used to sell magazines over the phone, and it was the worst job ever.
Well, I did it twice. So the first time I did it, it was for Electrolux vacuum cleaners. And I called people to see if they wanted a free service check on their vacuum. And one day I called a woman and she said, wow, you're great on the phone. How much are they paying you? And I told her, I don't know, it was like $5 an hour. And she was like, cause I'm old. And she was like, I'll give you $1 more an hour and bring a friend. And so I was like, great. So I then went to a van line and called people to see if they wanted a free estimate on their moving costs. Numb. I was in high school. That was a job that said to me.
That's so funny. I was in high school too, and I did it.
That was a job that said to me, Alyssa, you want to go to college. College isn't for everybody.
No, it's not. But yes.
But for me, college was for me.
I love it. Coffee or energy drinks to survive your workday?
I only have 1 cup of coffee a day, and then I like tea in the afternoon.
Tea? Hot tea or cold tea?
Any tea, I'm drinking it right now.
Awesome. That's
Right
me.
now it's
I'm the
cold.
same. In the morning, I'm like, I'll drink a whole pot of coffee. I'm terrible at it. But then, like, once noon hits, I'm done. And then I switch to water and, like Gatorade or something.
Too much caffeine for me, and I get shaky and, like, I don't like
It's,
the feeling.
I used to be so hopped up on caffeine, I could drink like a Mountain Dew right before I went to bed. And now that I'm older, it definitely affects me much differently.
I mean, I didn't start drinking coffee probably till about 10 years ago.
I was the same until like I was 30. I didn't drink coffee. Even all those years as a police officer working midnight shift, I never drank coffee.
Really?
And then I got a day shift job where it was even. And for some reason, I started drinking coffee because I needed to pick me up.
Well, I didn't like the flavor. I found it to be too bitter, but now I like the flavor.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like, I know like the first time I tried a beer, I was like, this is the most disgusting thing in the world. And then I don't know if something happens when you get older or what, but I don't drink now anyway. But I remember, when I got older, I liked the taste of it. And when but I remember when I was young, I was like, why do adults drink this? This is the grossest thing you could ever taste.
Yeah, your taste buds actually change, but I still don't like beer. But I was in Germany a couple years ago, and you're in Germany and there's beer, right? We went to like these beer
Yeah.
halls and stuff because like you go, it's like
Yeah.
historic. You have to go to the beer halls. So we went, and I was like, I don't like beer. What should we get? And the waitress recommended a Radler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which I had never heard of. What is it called here? There's another name for it. It's half Pilsner, half Sprite.
Yeah.
Shandy. In
Yes. A
America,
shandy.
it's
Yep.
called a shandy, but I learned of it as a Radler. In Germany, it's a Radler. And I actually
Yep.
do like that.
Yeah. That's awesome, though. I like it. For you, one song to pump up a team meeting, if you were going to use one, what would it be?
That's really hard. And I'll
Th-
tell you, I had an assistant years ago. Oh, I loved her so much. She was amazing. And I would mention song names, and she like had no idea
Really?
I was talking about because she was so much younger than me.
Yeah.
So then I used to like introduce her to songs. What was one song? Oh, you know what she had never heard? What's that Fuji song? Strumming My Pain.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what song it is, but what is it called? Now it's time to Google. Let's see.
Killing Me Softly.
That's it.
So I
Killing
was
Me
like
Softly.
singing it in my head. I didn't think that anyone wanted to hear me sing. So Killing Me Softly, which is not originally a Fuji song, but I love that song. And
Yeah.
then she was that was a song. I don't know. That was just what popped into my head.
That's awesome, though. I love it. So for you, dream office perk and go wild, anything. Like if you could have, and it could be multiple, but
It's easy. My husband works for like this big law firm, and they have the most amazing perks. I mean, they have free food. They have like this cafeteria, everything's subsidized. Like, and they make, those are lawyers. Like
yeah,
my husband's not an attorney, but they make a lot of money. And
sure.
I'm a regular person, but he works there. And they're like, you could get like a gourmet lunch for like $3, right?
Wow.
I know. And they have like the best snacks, and they like fly them first class, and they go on these business trips and stay in these fancy places. Like, I want all of that.
Yes,
I want
I do
all of
too.
that.
I do too. Now, it would be tough for me. So I work remotely for my main job. So it would be tough for me to tell the boss, because I guess that's me, to have better food in the house. But yeah, I like that. And I've seen places. I know my brother-in-law works for a software company where they have a cafeteria, just like you said. They've got free drinks. They do happy hours, at the work. They like to get from one floor to the other. They have slides. I'm like, okay, this is fun.
No, I know. They go to like Michelin starred restaurants for
Yeah.
like their holiday party. And I'm like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, that's what I want. I want all of that. I love that
Yeah,
fancy
I
stuff.
love it. And you know what? People don't realize that it does, it can cost money, but that truly does bring some value to your employees as well.
It does. They had, over COVID, they did like these magic shows. And at the time my kids were little, they did magic shows on Zoom for the
That's
employees
awesome.
and their families. Like they do all of these really cool things. Yeah, I love all of that.
I love that. That's a lot of employee engagement is what I like to, and I love places like that. And I mean, I work for a small company now, and they do a great job as far as engaging the employees, especially for being a remote company. But yeah, it's nice to see these little extra perks come into an office. It's just fun,
It is
you
fun.
know? All right,
And that's
Alyssa, last
important.
question.
That's important. Wait, one more
Yes.
comment.
No, you're right.
Play at work is very important. It's one of the factors that keeps people at their job.
And not only that, but it helps build team camaraderie as well, and gets people to know each other outside of the normal work phases, you know? So yeah, I love it. All right, last question. If you could ban one workplace phrase forever, what would it be?
If I could ban one workplace phrase. I had a boss probably like 20 years ago who hated the term just a friendly reminder. He felt that it was backhanded, and I've been mad at him for like 20 years because every time I see it, I'm like, yeah, it's like, I'm not going to forget. Don't worry. Just a friendly reminder. I don't know.
That's fine. So for me, my work is do more with less. I've heard that
that's just
so many times. Yeah.
We
And I'm
don't
like,
have any money.
Yeah, I get it. I get it now, especially with these new and especially working in technology with AI tools, they're actually empowering us to do more with less. But on the other hand, there's still stuff that you can't do more with less. You know what I mean? You still have to have a human. And if there's only one human doing it, you can't do it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
there's only so much a human can do.
That's a phrase. We're not going to backfill that position.
Exactly.
That is a phrase I never want to hear at work.
Yep. Or we're going to let it go through attrition.
Ugh.
Yes. So see, that wasn't too bad. That was the dude and dudette Q&A. Pretty easy. Just some fun stuff. But yeah, Alyssa, this was super awesome. I love having you on. I love the fact of self-awareness. I think that's a huge thing. And I've never really even thought of that from a managerial standpoint as being aware of yourself. You think about being aware of your crew that works for you, being aware of the leadership that's above you, but you never really do think about yourself. So I think it's very important. And I'm very grateful that you brought that up in this episode because I think it can help our listeners help build a more meaningful life, not just in work, but outside of work too, because these are things that, obviously we're applying them to the workplace, right? As managers, but what does everybody manage their own life? And these are things that you can use in your own life too. And I'm just so grateful that you came on for this because I think we can use it in business. We can use it in life. And it's just a great thing. But before we go and wrap up, I want to know where can, all of the listeners find out more about WorkWise Labs?
WorkWiseLabs.com.
That's pretty easy, right?
I actually got the
You actually got the website.
Thank goodness. I got that. What do you call it? You call it
the web address?
Yeah, I actually got the web address.
It is funny. I got the same thing for Just a Dude podcast. So I couldn't do Just a Dude. That was already there, but Just a Dude podcast is there. But no, that's great. And do you have any social media that you use that people can follow you at?
I do. I have WorkWise Labs on Instagram, WorkWise Labs on LinkedIn, and my name on Alyssa Zylbershlag on Facebook. But those are my socials right now.
Awesome. That's excellent. And final thoughts, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
It's a good question. I want to leave your listeners with knowing that management is a skill. And all skills can be learned.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was going to say something to that effect earlier, Alyssa, because, it's hard to create folks, but managers, like you said, it's a skill and you can be taught. And, you have to be willing to be taught, number one. But number two, if you are taught, and these are the things for the people out there, if you're just come to a new management position and you're like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't figure this out, or maybe I need some help. Here's Alyssa. She has her, the information here. Reach out to your company. Maybe they can work with Alyssa to help get some training in there if you don't have it already. Work with your own HR department. If they do have that training, get involved. But the fact of the matter is you're not the first manager that there has ever been, and nor will you be the last one. And so we've all gone through these things and we learn. But if you want to learn faster, definitely get a hold of Alyssa in WorkWise Labs because she'll definitely be able to help you and your company get you to the right place that you need to be.
Thanks, Nate.
Well, that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and review on your favorite podcast platform. We can keep this conversation going on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and more. Until our next episode, I'm Nathan with Just a Dude Podcast. Keep it real, keep it chill, and keep being just a dude or a dudette.